I'm Catherine Sharn, host of the podcast Horse Tales with Cat. My guest today is a rider, trainer, and entrepreneur. Sharn Wordley hails from New Zealand and represented his country at the 2008 Olympics in Beijing, as well as the 2018 World Equestrian Games. He has also ridden on numerous Nation Cup teams and won over 50 Grand Prix competitions to date, including most recently 3 wins at the World Equestrian Center. He is also the co-founder of Worldly Martin Equestrian and the founder of the Equine Design and Development Collective in Ocala. Welcome to the show, Sharn.
Thanks for having me.
So I always like to go back to the very beginnings with people that I interview. And I guess my first question for you would be, how did you come to the sport? Because it seems like you had an interesting journey from what I read online.
Okay. I'm not sure what you read, but I don't know really. My mother liked horses, my grandmother liked horses, and they both rode, not competitively, but they rode. And I've always just had an affinity and love for horses right from a very early age. I had ponies at my second or third birthday, and I just kind of went from there. I got my first pony when I was about 5, I think. And my mum always took me to riding lessons and stuff when I was a kid.
And so when would you say that you started becoming a little more passionate about jumping versus just riding for pleasure?
Right from the beginning. I've always wanted to jump. Even when I was 4 or 5 years old, I was wanting to jump.
And were there a lot of trainers in New Zealand? Because I'm not really familiar with how the sport works there.
Yeah, well, we have a good, strong pony club system. So we all go to pony club when we're kids. So we do a little bit of everything. So I did the pony club stuff until I was in my early teens, and then I did some 3-day eventing, but then at about 15, I kind of really focused on show jumping.
And did that require you having to leave New Zealand, or were you able to pursue that there?
You can pursue it there. I chose to leave. I just kind of had that mentality that I wanted to see the world and get out there. So I left New Zealand at a fairly young age. I left when I was just before my 18th birthday.
Oh, wow. Okay, that is very young. And where did you go first? Because I do remember reading that you were with Stahl Hendricks. So I imagine that's with Emil and Paul Hendricks in...
Yeah. I won the New Zealand Young Rider Championship, which was sponsored by Canadian Airlines. And the prize was a round trip to Spruce Meadows to watch the Masters. So I extended the trip and I went for about 10 months. And I went to Spruce Meadows, spent the summer there. And then I came back to New Zealand, did the season and took my horse, and I have never been back.
So let's just sort of rewind. So you went to Spruce Meadows and but you didn't bring your horse with you at that point. You just came to watch.
Yeah, came to watch.
And then who did you meet that sparked your interest, that got you the gig going abroad?
So I became very good friends with Kyle King. I was working together with him. We're the same age. So we became very close friends and still are. And I groomed for them and worked for him for the summer, and kind of ventured around Canada, and I loved it. So then I had my horse back in New Zealand, went back into the summer, and I got a job with Brent Laura Blisky. So when I brought my horse back, I spent that next summer with them.
Oh, so that's at Thunderbird.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're in Spruce Meadows for, the 3 or 4 meets there, and did the summer in Vancouver. It was great. That was back in the early 90s.
Yeah, I'm very fascinated by this because a lot of Canadian riders that are somewhat older than yourself, they've followed a similar trajectory where I would say there's a little bit of a change nowadays with riders coming up through the ranks. They don't necessarily work from the ground up, but you did it what I would call the organic way, which is hard work, moving from spot to spot, learning from some of the best. And so then at what point did you end up in, I guess, in Holland?
So I had my one horse with me, and I was in California at Indio doing the winter circuit there, and I was store cleaning for people and had my one horse there. So I was doing odd jobs for people, and I just wanted to go to Europe. And then right at the end of the circuit on the last week, I overheard some people talking that they'd paid for 3 horses to go to Europe, and one of them was sick and couldn't go, so they had a spot and they'd paid for it. And I was fortunate enough to win the high amateur classic that week, so I had a little bit of money spare after paying my show bill. So I offered that to at a so 48 hours later, I was on a plane heading to Europe.
Wow. That just sounds like a really big stroke of luck. So it also
it was good.
sounds like some sort of destiny was coming. If there was ever a karma sort of story, that seems to be it. It sounds to me like there was no doubt that you were meant to do what you're doing.
Well, I was just on a journey. I was going. So what I really was trying to do, I was trying to get to Ireland because I met Nolsey Duggan at Spruce Meadows. And I was chatting with him, and he invited me to the horse show at that he ran there in Cork, Mill Street. And I really, for some reason, I just really wanted to go do that horse show. So I was sort of venturing towards Ireland, and I was going to find my way to Ireland and then get a job there because I'd always wanted to do that. But I didn't have a whole lot of money left over. I only had $400 left over from paying for that trip with a horse. So I didn't know where to go when I got to Holland, and I didn't know anybody. So I was stuck at horse services at the transport company when I got there for days and days.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 800 guilders because it was 2 guilders to $1 at that stage. And I was staying in a little hotel and just hand walking my horse and cruising around, looking through the Hoefslag magazine, seeing if I could find a job somewhere in Holland when I got there. And then I think they got sick of me, so they called up Paul and Emile and see if they needed a store cleaner. So they sent their driver to pick me up, and I got a job there for a few months.
Wow. I was going to say, nothing like going to one of the best.
Yeah, that was a great experience. And I met a bunch of people there, and I was there for 6 months, I think. And then I ventured to England because Mill Street was coming up, and I really wanted to go to that show. So I went to England about a month earlier. I had a friend that I knew from New Zealand, an English guy, so I wanted to go visit him. So I went there to his place for a month, and then ventured off to Ireland to Mill Street.
And so what year would that have been?
That was 95.
And so tell me a little bit about the journey between 95 and 2008.
Okay, so when I was there visiting my friend in England, he's lived in a little village, and it was the summer of 95, and I was trying to get my horse fit for the Mill Street Derby. I was keeping my horse in his mother's sort of back paddock,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no arenas, no up and down the road trying to keep the horse fit. But it was actually a summer in England that was really hot, and the ground was really hard. So I introduced myself to a farmer in the village who had a round pen. So there was some sand in the round pen, so I wanted to lunge my horse to keep the horse fit. I ended up becoming friends with them, and they flew to Ireland to watch me at the horse show. And when I was in Ireland, they offered me a position to come back to their farm in England, and that they'd buy some horses and potentially sponsor me and start doing some show jumping. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was with them for 3.5 years. We ended up having sort of 5 or 6 international horses, and I traveled to Europe doing some bigger horse shows. So it was a great opportunity and start for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we did shows like Rome and Hickstead and places like that, St. Gallen, and some really big horse shows with them. It was great.
I love that it just sounds like you just took chances, but those chances were always led to something bigger. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, pretty much.
I'm sort of marveling the fact that you've jumped from spot to spot and always found a really good landing, and it seems to be taking you to the next, sort of the next position in your life.
Sure,
So,
yeah.
so after that
So after
stint,
that, what I wanted to do was try my hand at all the facets of the industry. So I was very lucky. I had some nice horses, and we did some international shows. I then wanted to try my hand at training, because there's only so many revenue streams when you're in the equestrian industry. So you can be a rider and compete, you can be a trainer and run a business, or you can buy and sell horses. Those are the sort of three ways you can do our sport. So I kind of wanted to focus periods of my life learning each facet of it. So my next stage was, I really wanted to learn how to manage a lot of staff and a lot of horses, and make a training business profitable and learn the ins and outs of it. So that was my next kind of goal, was to do that. So
okay.
I rented some stalls at a place called Waterstock Training Center, which was a very famous trainer called Lars Cederholm. It was his place, and he had a long-standing training center there, and he was retiring, and he'd sold the place. So I met the people who'd bought it, and I rented 2 stalls, and I started with a friend of mine who had a brood mare and that mare's young 3-year-old, and that was my first clientele. And within a year, we had 75 horses and 25 people living on place. So we kind of
Holy
really
smokes.
grew it quite quickly, and had a lot of experience in running a business like that. So we did that for a couple of years, and then I wanted to then just focus on learning how to trade horses, because I wasn't very good at it. So I really wanted to focus a period of time at learning that industry of buying and selling horses and the ins and outs of trading. So I thought, well, the best place to do that would be Belgium. So I moved to Belgium and started a buying and selling sort of business out of Belgium, and focusing on trying to sell horses to the United States. And I did that for sort of 3 or 4 years, and then through the relationships I met doing that, I decided I wanted to move back to America.
Oh.
Hmm.
So at what point in this journey did you go to the Olympics in Beijing?
So then I got to America, and
Okay.
I thought, well, I don't want to do the big training thing anymore, because that was really hard work,
It is
and it
very
wasn't
hard
and
work.
it wasn't very profitable.
Mm-hmm.
And buying and selling horses is great, but I always wanted to be a rider and focus on a team of horses where I could be in the sport. So America was my chance to be able to do that. So America is actually really expensive to horse show, as everybody knows, but it's actually the cheapest place in the world to show if you've got 4 very fast meter 45 horses and you're prepared to go to the right shows, because you can win, up to $50,000 Grand Prix, 25,000s, 30,000s, and make good prize money with 2 horses in those classes and rotating those horses each week. You can actually make money versus spending money.
Mm-hmm.
And in Europe, yeah, you might be able to sell the horse, but you go to a horse show, there's a lot more people in it, the prize money's less. It's very hard to actually be in the positive from horse shows. So
Mm-hmm.
that was my plan, was to come to America, have some older horses that knew their job, that weren't very expensive, so I could practice, running a team of horses, going from show to show, focusing on winning prize money, and learning the ins and outs of running a show team. And so that's what I did for a number of years here in the States. I went to all the different little horse shows, tried to win as much money as I could, and manage my team as best I could.
And
Mm.
you were doing this all on your own then at this point. You didn't have
Yeah.
a partner in crime that was helping you with the
No,
training. You were just
no, no, no.
okay.
Yeah, it's just kind of just sort of winging it. And I really wanted to be in America because America was where I always wanted to end up anyway. I spent nearly a decade in Europe, but America is where I really wanted to be.
Okay.
So yeah, I did that for a few years, and I started in California because my friend Kyle King was there. So I came to sort of hang out with him, and I went all around up and down the Californian coast, going to all the smaller shows that had some decent prize money, and ventured around. And then I made my way east, and I ended up in Ocala in 2006. And I've been between Ocala and West Palm Beach for since 2006.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about your mount for the 2008 Olympics, because I know from what I read, I gather it did not go as well as you would have hoped.
No.
And I wasn't sure if the horse was young, or I didn't know what the situation was. So I just thought I'd ask you.
I was riding a horse that was an experienced horse that had been to the Olympic Games before in the World Cup finals, and it was of a client of mine's. It was a horse that he rode, and that was the horse that I was sort of planning on riding, but he got injured. So my younger horse was actually going quite well. He was actually had better results than any of the other horses, that horse included, but he was a little bit quirky and a little finicky, and he was not the most reliable. But in saying that, two shows before the Olympic Games, we did in a World Cup in Europe, in the Grand Prix in Poznan, which was a big Grand Prix. He's a horse that could do it if he was in the right space, but atmosphere really got to him. So that was the horse that I had. We were on the team, and he'd had decent results, but he got there, and the flames at the Olympics there really stressed him out, and he got very small, and the first day was subpar, let's put it that way.
Well, I remember the Beijing Olympics being very overwhelming for a lot of horses. I mean, it was quite something. As a rider, it has to be disappointing, obviously, for you, especially when you know what the horse is capable of. And so, how do you help the horse day two? I guess, what would your approach have been?
For me, I wanted to go to the Olympic Games, and I thought about the Olympic Games every single day since '84, when I watched Mark Todd win the gold medal in Los Angeles. So that had been my goal for every day from 10 years old all the way through to when I went to the Olympic Games. So you're very motivated just to go to the Olympics. I didn't have the correct horse to go. I didn't have the experience myself to go, but I wanted to go, and we went anyway. And if you're going to do something like the Olympic Games and you are not prepared and not on the right mount, of course it's not going to go well. Typically, the chances of success are very slim. I just went drastically bad for me. But as far as an experience, it was terrible at the time, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So any bad round I have now is nothing compared to having 9 rails down the first day of the Olympic Games. So it's actually a good thing. It was a thing. Okay, if you'd gone really well and been top 10 at the Olympic Games, that's one thing. That's amazing. Going mediocre is fine, but to go really bad and get something out of it is also good. It was a great experience, period. It was just hard at the time.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you that, just because it was funny. I had this conversation with Mario Delorier recently, because, and it was interesting. He had sort of a similar vision in his head, because he'd seen Michel Vaillancourt win the silver medal at the Olympics in '76, and so that was what motivated him to want to ride for the Canadian team. And his last Olympics in Tokyo, he said, it was not great, but it was also, just as you said, what do you take away from it, and how do you grow as a person? I wondered, beyond the new confidence that you found from enduring something that challenging and then moving on, what would you say were the other big takeaways from that experience?
Oh, that you don't go to a championship if you're not ready. I can tick that box now. And it's really hard, and it's got harder and harder and harder. Obviously, as the sport's got tougher and tougher and tougher, and the horsepower and the amount of fantastic riders that there are now. 20, 30 years ago, you could count the really good riders on two hands, really. Now there's people I've never heard of that just ride unbelievably well. And the amount of money in the sport, it's a different sport now. And with that, you've got better horses. The courses are more technical because there's better horses and better riders. So to enter these things and feel like you're going to be okay that's getting smaller and smaller. But to go to a championship, which is all of our dreams, you've got to make sure that you've got the right horse and you're ready to go. And I've been able to be in the situation to go to a championship since, and I've declined it because I know what the end result's going to be, and I don't need to do that anymore. Already got that shirt. My goal still, and my passion still, is to go to a championship and do well. But I need to be on the right mount, on the right time, to have at least a shot to do well.
I think that's a great attitude. I feel like nowadays a lot of people just want to go to certain events just to tick off the box. And I would say, I know as an amateur rider of 35 years of competing as an amateur, I would also say it's fun to have those experiences, but like you say, there's nothing like going in when you're not mounted properly or you're just not prepared. It can really, and it has such a negative effect on the horse as well. It's not just you at the end of the day. So I think that's kind of interesting. But that's also a good segue into, I wanted to talk a little bit about your business with the footing, because again, it started very organically. You and a friend of yours, Craig Martin, who I understand is also from New Zealand, because you had competed in Europe and you were familiar with the footing that was used there. When you came to North America, you saw that there was a need for better footing. And to your point, as far as just the technicality of the courses today and the height and what horses are doing, it seems like it's almost a given expectation at really good facilities where you're competing that you're going to have good footing. So tell me a little bit about how that business evolved for you, because I thought it was all just very, as I said, organic and also very clever.
I don't know how clever it was. But there was a drastic need for it here in the States. They were a good 10 to 15 years behind Europe, and there was no change in sight that I could see. So the one thing reasons that I really wanted to come to America is a foreigner can be accepted to run a business here and have as equal opportunity as an American, which is unique because that doesn't happen elsewhere. You can't be in Germany, have an idea, and start a business that easily. It just doesn't work that way. But America could. So I really wanted to be here so I could start a business. So I was always, through those years of figuring out I couldn't make any money out of being a rider, and I couldn't make any money out of buying and selling horses because I wasn't good enough at that job or prepared to spend the time needed searching for them. I wasn't going to make much money out of that. And being a trainer was very hard unless you are one of a handful of trainers in America who are exceptionally good at it with massive businesses. There's really no money in it for your average trainer. So I wanted a equine-based business that I could make a living off. So that popped up to me straight away because nobody was doing it. There was a drastic need for it because the footing here was so bad. So just sort of his choice. I can't even change a tire on a car, so I'm not very mechanically minded, and I don't like doing a lot of the work either. So I needed my friend Craig because he has an unbelievable work ethic. He's that guy to make sure it all happens. So we were a good combination together to make that company work well. So we just started it. We didn't know anything about building arenas. We just saw the need and nobody in the market. So we just started, and we figured it out quite quickly. We had some friends in Europe that we kind of racked their brain a little bit that were in the industry. They gave us some important tips. And our good friend, Kevin Babington, was crazy enough to let us, he needed a new ring, so he let us build it. So we had our first punter. And so we built the ring for Kevin, and he loved it, and it worked well. And that was the start of it. And that was back in 2007. We actually got our first arena built.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was that long ago.
Yeah, we started the company. Well, I started working on the company in 2006. Yeah.
Well, and it's also
18 years.
interesting. What I thought was kind of cool as well when I was reading about the company was that you and Craig had kind of known each other over the years, but it wasn't like you were in constant contact. It was just sort of your path, again, karmically, your paths seemed to keep crossing.
Yeah,
So,
well, we were friends when we were kids. We did ponies together, and then we did Young Riders together. And he went off to South Africa, and then he was in England and in Holland, and we were saying, and then back in 98, when I had that training center, he came to that training center and was based there with me as well. We weren't really in business together, but we were on the same property and hanging out together. And then when we made the move to Belgium to do the training center, he was with me, and we started our business relationship then, buying and selling horses together. And then when we moved to America, he did his own training business for a bit, and then we kind of met up 3 years later and started the footing company, or 2 years later and started the footing company.
okay. And it was originally, did I read correctly? Was it originally based in Lexington, or was it always in Florida?
It was wherever we were.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was a Florida-based company.
Okay.
It's a Florida-based company. Lexington, I used to summer in Lexington a lot, and yeah,
Oh,
I
so,
just had farms in Lexington. Lots to summer.
oh, okay. And then educate me a little bit. I guess
Mm.
this isn't a bricks and mortar type of company initially when you're doing the footing.
Yeah, not initially. It was just sort of Craig and I, and we had some subcontractors that would work for us at the beginning. And then that's grown now to, we have a head office in Wellington near the horse show there, and we have multiple crews and a big office, and it's turned into quite a large business now.
Well, and it was interesting to me, again, this is where I guess I did feel you were particularly clever, is it's not just about footing, it's about the drags you need to use in the arena. There's horse spas. There were a number of other products, and I thought they all just naturally fit. But again, it didn't seem like anybody else was doing this. So I don't know. I mean, you're saying you don't think you were particularly clever, but I was thinking you seem a little bit visionary to me, because I know now as well this year you've also started this collective, which is a group of companies that collaborate to help people build their equestrian facilities. And again, it just seems like very smart way to go. And it sounds like it's just a natural extension of what you were already doing. So tell me a little bit about the way your mind works.
Yeah, well, I have a passion for building farms and designing farms. So where our business went was we'd buy a farm, remodel it, turn it into a turnkey sort of high-end equestrian facility, and then sell it. And that became a very core part of our business. So we would design places. We had places in Wellington, multiple in Kentucky, Ocala, sell. That was quite successful, obviously using all the experience we'd had from working on hundreds and hundreds of facilities throughout the years. And it became quite lucrative. So what we're doing is expanding that by buying large tracts of land here in Ocala and subdividing and turning into smaller equestrian farms, because there's a real need for it here in Ocala. Ocala was 300-acre racehorse farms or 5 acres in a double wide. There was nothing really that suited the niche market for the equestrians that are moving here nowadays. There's nothing turnkey. So our goal was to buy lots of tracts of land near the World Equestrian Center, subdivide them, and create a setup for somebody outside of Ocala, or people from Ocala, but typically for someone from Wellington or wherever they may come from, California, the ability to find a piece of land that they like and have a group of companies behind them, right from architectural design to arena building to barn building, houses, right from we have finance people, we have engineers, we have everything there is to go from raw land to building out a farm. Even we can mow the grass and do pest control at the end for them. So it's a whole turnkey sort of solution, but it's not just with a GC per se that marks everything up. These are all groups of people that are individually their own companies working together to make it go quickly and smoothly.
Well, I just think it seems really, really smart because certainly I feel like World Equestrian Center being built in Ocala has been a game changer for show jumping riders, whether you're an amateur or a professional. And so the fact that you sort of building alongside it just makes a lot of sense to me. And I was curious from your perspective, I guess I have my own idea of how it has changed the sport. But for you as a rider and trainer, having a facility like that, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Spruce Meadows, but on a different type of scale. And with all the indoor arenas, obviously having, year-round opportunities. But it also changes your lifestyle in that you're able to stay in one spot and have horse shows every week that are great quality with great course designers and good prize money. How do you feel that it is changing the sport, particularly in Florida? Because I would imagine that there's a lot of riders that are kind of rethinking Palm Beach, even though it's an amazing showground. I just think it feels like Ocala really somehow now has more to offer. Would you agree? Or
definitely. And I was very bullish on Ocala right from the beginning over the last, sort of 4 years, because there's so much growth to be had here. The Roberts family, what they've done at the World Equestrian is phenomenal, and it's not just for hunter jumper people. From a developer's standpoint, it's not just hunter jumper people. They're doing a lot in dressage. They're doing a lot for Pasafinos and Western pleasure and all of these different disciplines of equestrian. And so there's a lot of people moving here from all facets of the equine world. Unlike Wellington's great. And I love Wellington. I go there a lot. My main office is there. I've lived there. I love it. But there's not a lot of Pasafinos going there, for example, or Western pleasure. So as far as growth from a property standpoint, the buy-in price was fractional compared to there. The growth here is dramatically more. So the turnkey solutions here were non-existent, where you've always been able to go to Wellington and find a turnkey farm that you could buy.
Yeah, and I was curious, did you ever get to meet Larry Roberts before he passed away?
I didn't. I've met his wife and his son, but I never got the chance to meet Larry, unfortunately.
I just feel like the two of you would have had a lot in common. I never got to meet him, but I just feel, as I said, that you share a lot of vision that he had, clearly from what he accomplished. But it's also interesting because what I liked about World Equestrian Center is it has also made the sport accessible to the public. And that part reminds me of Ron Southern and Bruce Meadows. That was always their goal. And I love that World Equestrian Center, every weekend, there's public that have no knowledge of show jumping that show up to watch. And it doesn't cost them anything.
Correct.
So I kind of like that part as well, that they really give back to the community. So how do you feel that shifts things again from your perspective as a rider?
Well, I mean, you're right. This place is very similar to Spruce Meadows in that aspect. I mean, you had this weekend, they had the food fair, and they've always got something going on. And there's always people that have never seen a horse there. And the place is always busy. They're doing a great job of creating that ambiance. And the way they've created the arena, it's packed nearly every Saturday night. There's great ambiance. It's fantastic. From a rider standpoint, from a show jumping Grand Prix rider standpoint, the schedules they've done, as much FEI as that they're doing, got 2 5-stars here now and multiple 4-stars and 3-stars and really good national money. And then to have hits just down the road, which is really up their game. Now that Tom Struzzieri sold it, they've put a lot of money in. Company has actually redone all the arenas, and they're going gangbusters. And they're really, the way the schedules are done, they're really complementing each other as well. So it's really nice to see Ocala working well together and creating kind of a mecca for show jumping, because you have everything here from a show jumping standpoint to offer that Wellington has, everything. But yet the buy-in's cheaper, there's not as much traffic, and you have that ability to get in a car and drive 3.5 hours and compete in Wellington as well. So what they've done is really change the outlook for the whole of Florida, Wellington included. Wellington's not going to change much, because even if 10% of the people left, which they're not, you wouldn't even notice the difference. It's so saturated and so many people there. But it's a great option for people from there to be able to come up here, get away from South Florida for a weekend horse show here with a great schedule. I love it because I can stay here. I've got young family. I've got a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old. So I can spend a lot of period of time and stay at home and sleep in my own bed and jump world-class show jumping, which is great. I used to have to travel all the time, and it's great to be able to stay here. And what the World Equestrian Center has also done is created a summer schedule here that rivals nearly anywhere. The prize money, the FEI, it's as good a buy in the summer here as it is anywhere in the country. So you can choose to base in Ocala all year round and have something to do, which is really unique, because there's nowhere else where you can base all year round and still have a good show circuit to as a base show circuit. We can travel. I went to Spruce Meadows this year, gone to New York, I've shown all over the country, but I still have a base circuit at home, which enables me to have a base here all year round.
Yeah, I as I said, I really feel like WEC in Ocala has been a game changer for a lot of people. It's quite an incredible setup. So I wanted to shift gears a little bit back to, I know your wife, Lauren, is also a show jumper, and wondering, so how did the two of you balance the riding? You have 2 children under the age of 4 and these businesses going on. How do you make all that happen? Because that's a tough go in the world of horses.
It is. We're both very busy, and but again, it's pretty much the only reason it's really working is the location we're in, because I can go to work and come home, and I'm in and out of here. I've got about 6 big jobs in Ocala right now, large jobs that we're doing, plus 4 subdivisions, but they're all within 10 minutes. They're all within 10 minutes of home. So, I'm here for lunch. I'm riding horses. I run off to an appointment. I come back. So if I was anywhere else, I wouldn't be able to have the same output as we are. So we also run a big, 40 stall training facility here too. At home, we have a trainer that does the training, but we have a 40 stall training facility here in Ocala, so which is full pretty much all the time. So I have 6 or 7 horses. My wife has 2 or 3 horses, and we compete a lot, and we run this facility as well. So yeah, we're pretty busy.
And tell me a little bit about, I know that there's 3 mounts this year in particular that you've had tremendous success with. I think it's Valentine Carr. Then there's Brindor de Haute Melanzy. And
I can't say his name either. So
I was thinking I should be able to, because I do speak French. And then there's Mick Jagger. So, and they all seem like different characters. So tell me a little bit about them, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And where did they come from as well? I don't know anything about the backgrounds of your horses.
Right. The horse that I'm jumping in the bigger classes is called Champion League. He's a horse that he's done well this year. He's the one I took to Spruce Meadows. I bought him from a Mexican friend, Alberto Michan. So he was here in Florida. I bought him from them. But I try to get most of my horses in America if I can. Valentine Carr, who's been a partner of mine for 3 years now, he was actually born and bred here in Ocala.
Oh, that's cool.
A Ocala bred horse. Fernando Cardenas bred him, and he was actually a mistake. I think Colt jumped the fence and he was a mistake, but he's been a great horse for me. He's won a lot of Grand Prix over the last 3 years. And then Bryn is a very exciting younger horse. He's 10, and he's just kind of found his straps, and he's a horse that I'm going to move up to the 4-star level this year.
And then Mick Jagger has been a partner of yours for a few years?
Yeah, Mick Jagger has also been 3 years. I bought him from Santiago Lumbre. He was here in Ocala, and Santiago was competing him. The horse had been in Mexico also, and he's been a great horse for me. He was last year. He was the leading horse at the hits for the leading Grand Prix horse at hits. He won the final $100,000 Grand Prix this year at hits, and he's been a good horse for me.
Wow. I was going to say, they all sound quite amazing. And have you had the opportunity to compete on the Mexican circuit? Because I've seen that that's really growing as well.
Yeah, I would love to. And I was sort of planning it last year, and it didn't happen. And I half tried to plan it for this year, but I was too busy with work that I couldn't really get away.
Mm-hmm. And how do you change hats? Because I would imagine you have to have tremendous focus for each thing you're doing. Obviously, the riding goes without question, but also the jobs, the family, just managing the schedule. Would you say you're a laser focused person? Is that what works for you, or?
I don't really know, because I have the concentration span of a gnat. So I don't really know, to be honest. I really don't. I've got really good people. I've got really good office staff, and the people that run the barn are really good. I'm quite good at getting good people to help me, I think, because I really know my weaknesses. I'm only good at a couple of things, so I have good people to help.
That also must speak to your character. I imagine I always feel like good people attract good people. So I'm going to give you that as well.
Well, I pay them well too.
As we sort of move towards the end of discussion, what's on your agenda? Like, what are some dreams that you still have ahead, and dreams as well for Lauren? I mean, I know I didn't get to speak with her, but I understand she was also hoping to make the Australian team, if I'm not mistaken, and represent them. And so
Lauren had one of those sort of fairy tale dreams of, Lauren was doing 3-day event riding it, and we purchased a little horse from her off a friend of ours that we do a lot of business with in Belgium, as a young 3-day event horse. And we didn't pay much money from it all, and he ended up being a superstar, like literally one of the best Grand Prix horses in the country. And he really, and the partnership that her horse had was phenomenal. And they went on their first Nations Cup team to Wellington, and she was double clear, one of 2 double clear in Wellington in the Nations Cup. And then she was on the team for the, can you hear me now? For the Olympic qualification for Paris. And so she was in Holland on the Nations Cup team there, and she was the leading horse rider for Nations as well. And then unfortunately her horse, so she missed the Olympics. So that was very sad. But the horse is perfectly healthy and coming back now. He'll be showing later part of the winter.
Wow, that's a tough go. But I'm glad to hear that the horse is healthy.
I know. She's fine. She's going to have a great few more seasons left on that horse. So hopefully the World Championships in 2 years.
Okay, well, fingers crossed. And how about yourself? Is there anything sort of left on your bucket list that you'd really like to accomplish? I mean, I know you've mentioned you'd like to go to a championship and be a winner. Is there one horse right now that you think is the one that might take you there?
Well, I don't necessarily, I mean, everyone wants to be a winner at a championship. My goal is to go to a championship and be respectable. That's what I'd really like to do. I'd like to go to a championship with a horse that should be at a championship, and it'll go kind of right. That's my goal. And if you could get a prize in one, that's even better. But I'm realistic nowadays. I'll be more than happy just to do that. That's really my goal. That's what my dream is. Do I have a horse now? I've got a 9, the Bryn horse, and then I have another very good 9-year-old that's jumping 3-star level. And I don't know if they would or could or might, but I'm not saying they couldn't either. And if they could, then they're good horses who could do a good job. I can't tell until the horse is doing it. It's too hard for me to tell. I've stopped predicting things like that. I'm just going to keep trying to do my best, and hopefully, I get to a championship and do okay.
Okay, well, that sounds like a good plan.
Yeah.
So I do want to thank you again for taking time out. I know you have a crazy schedule just from our discussion. So I do appreciate your sharing with our listeners today. And I wish you and Lauren and the kids all the best. Yeah, it's coming up to Thanksgiving there in the States. So I'll say a early happy Thanksgiving to you all.
Well, thank you very much, and I enjoyed being on your podcast.
If you would like to learn more about the podcast and upcoming guests, please follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Horsetails with Cat.